Hello, I am Chris Evans. I'm a professor of English at Orange Coast College, and I am thrilled to invite everyone to the S.T.E.A.M Race to Space Reading Challenge. Just for reading some amazing books about science, math, coding, engineering, you can win some amazing prizes. Tours of the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a visit to the Discovery Cube in Santa Ana, question and answer with astronauts, coding classes, but most importantly, you will learn the benefits of math, science, technology. And for you, maybe you'll find a major for college. Maybe you'll find something you love to study in high school. Maybe you'll find a career. So I hope all of you join us on this race to space. And after today's event, you can visit the website, you can register for this amazing adventure. So let's blast off by talking to some amazing writers, scientists, and artists. So I want to welcome everyone to the show. Philippe, Ashlan, Jennifer, Stephen, and Nicole.
Well, thanks, Chris, for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, this is wonderful. We all fit in the boxes. I wasn't sure. This is perfect. Thank you so very, very much. I'm really thrilled to speak to all of you. I will say personally before we begin, I love reading your books. This was a joy for me. I was grading papers the last 2 weeks, and I get a chance to sort of escape some really incredible books, and it was just such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So let's start with Adrian and Philippe. Okay, so I'll see the rest of you in just a bit. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Ashlan, I apologize. Ashlan, Philippe, thank you so very much. Let me give an introductions first. You probably know these two because they have been everywhere. We are joined by Ashlan and Philippe Cousteau. They are filmmakers, author, environmental advocates. You've seen them on Entertainment Tonight. You have seen them on Shark Week, Nuclear Sharks. Loved that one. You've seen them on the Caribbean Pirate Treasure, Awesome Planet, Oceans, all of those things. And they are here to talk about both of their books, Going Blue, a teen guide to saving our oceans, lakes, rivers, and wetlands, and also Oceans for Dummies. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, indeed.
That was a mouthful.
We try to make it hard.
No, this is so easy. It's so wonderful to talk to you. Because let me first start with this. My first question is this. In Going Blue, Philippe, you talk about how water is everywhere. Or is it? You talk about how water is so important, but it's become big business. So I want to start there. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so Going Blue is really a response to what we see with young people around the world through my work, through my nonprofit Earth Echo International, that young people are concerned about water issues. Certainly the global water crisis is an issue that affects all of us. And we open the book helping young people understand it and frame the crisis, because one of the questions we like to ask young and old alike: when you wake up in the morning, what is the first way that you interact with water? And a lot of people will say, oh, I drink water, or I brush my teeth. And it's like, well, actually, when you put on your clothes, and you change out of your pajamas, you put on some clothes, you say you put on a cotton t-shirt or jeans, those products consume thousands of gallons of water, right? Enough water, I was reading recently, a pair of jeans is enough water to feed a human being, or to quench the thirst of a human being for up to 2 years. So we're interacting with water with the clothes that we wear. When you eat an apple, we're talking hundreds of gallons of water for one single apple. So the food that you eat, the clothes that you wear, everything you're interacting with requires or required water to get to you. And so that's really the basis that we're trying to establish with the book, is reminding people how connected we are to water every moment of every day.
Well, you two have been out there. You're probably closer to the ocean than most of us. What kind of damage have you two seen? I mean, what's going on with our lakes and rivers and oceans?
There's a lot. I mean, everything from ocean acidification to, our ocean waters are actually warming. But to the pollution, and that includes plastic pollution, but also urban pollution and runoff from fertilizers and from our streets and overfishing. I mean,
the list goes on.
There's a lot of bad news. And what we really like to try to remind people is the hopefulness, and that our ocean, if we can give it a chance, has an amazing and incredible ability to renew itself. Because we don't want to sustain the ocean as it is now. We want to let it regenerate to the way that it was before. And another thing that people also think about is, oh, if I live in the middle of a country or if I live in a desert, my actions don't affect the ocean. And that is just not true. Really, everything that we do affects the ocean. And on the flip side, our ocean affects everything on this planet, from the rain that falls in our crops inland, from the water that we drink if we live in the desert, to controlling our climate and our weather. And I think that a lot of people forget that, or they don't know that. And we really do just try to remind people every single day that at the ocean and lakes and rivers and really the entire water system is part of their life and part of our survival. And it needs some help these days.
I loved how positive your book was, how it gives us ways to address this. But I do have to just go negative for one quick moment. I live in Huntington Beach. I live right off of Talbot Wetlands, and everyone's obviously aware of what just happened. I just would love to have your reactions of what you saw with this, what we could do about this, why wetlands are so important.
Well, both Ashlan and I went down and we're investigating the oil spill a few weeks ago. It's a tragedy. It's a foreseeable tragedy. There's an old saying, it's not if you're going to have an oil spill, it's when. I spent a lot of time covering the BP oil spill, and indeed what we found was, if you look back at the regulatory filings by BP and these oil companies, they're like, this kind of spill will never happen. These
or
wellheads will never.
Scenario.
Yeah, this is a worst case scenario. This won't happen. These are foolproof. These wellhead, the blowout preventers. Then we have the worst environmental disaster in American history.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that with oil spills, it's going to happen. And unfortunately, a lot of the rigs off California aren't even economically productive. But it's cheaper to keep them running at a loss than to shut them down for a few years to decommission them, which is crazy. So particularly with the wetlands, what's so scary about that, and we saw this with Louisiana and the BP oil spill, is once that oil gets into that soil and kills the plants and particularly the roots of the grasses that hold that soil together, then you have erosion, and then that wetland goes away, never to come back. It doesn't grow more, right? So it's very, very invasive, very dangerous and detrimental to the health of wetlands, which of course are nurseries for fish, birds, all sorts of wildlife.
And most of the coast of Southern California, the entire state, was one continuous wetland.
I mean,
all the way down.
God, you look at the entire Port of Long Beach was a massive wetland, and 100 years ago, everybody thought, "Ooh, it's smelly, it's gross. Let's just get rid of it." Massive wetlands in Los Angeles, all along the coast. Millions of migrating birds, was habitat for fish, so the fisheries along here were much richer. And we just bulldozed it and built whatever we wanted to build. So already we've destroyed the wetlands along the coast. So whatever little bit we have left, we need to protect. And oil spills are a very insidious danger to wetlands.
And we've had to fight for every little one that still remains. As I said, I walk that every day, and it's tragic to see what just happened. So thank you. Let's turn to the positive though. Your book was so beautifully written in terms of with Going Blue. I love the sections that are teens in action. All of them were specifically located to certain communities and young people who just decide they're going to change the world. Can you tell me why you decided to put those teens in action parts in your book, and then how you see today's generation, like what they can do as well?
Yeah. So, we found over the years that it's very, very important in all of our youth education work to be able to model behavior. It's much easier to look at something and see what other young people have done and then be like, oh, wow, I didn't think of that, but I could do that myself. So we tried to find stories, which isn't hard because young people are doing extraordinary work around the world. Yeah. Try to find stories that demonstrated lots of different young people, different kinds of young people in different situations, right? On the coast, away from the coast, near water, away from water. Just to give a sense to the readers of what's possible, because so much is possible.
And I think that, growing up, people always told our generation that we were the leaders of tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow you can do it, but it's not true. And I think what's so exciting is the generation of today realizes that they are the leaders of today. Right. At 8 years old, they can change an entire city's single-use plastic guidelines. At 14 years old, they can start writing legislature for new buildings in the city of Miami. At any age, people can have, these young people can have a tremendous impact, not only on their family and on their friends, but on their community and on their elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you two also have a next generation behind you that's going to change the world as well. I can hear. So congratulations. Congratulations. So I do want you guys to talk a little bit as well, too, if you don't mind, about a project I know that means so much to you, which is Earth Echo International, right? And this is an organization that, you care deeply about, that you started. Could you tell us about that?
Well, Earth Echo is an organization we've been around 16 years. We're a leading youth environmental education organization based in Washington, D.C., but we have programs all over the world in dozens of countries. We were founded with the belief that, if we're going to build a kind of hopeful, thriving, as Ashlan said, restorative future, that it's going to start with young people, and it's going to start with young people recognizing the importance of protecting our air and our water and shifting how society values those things politically, economically, et cetera. That change starts with young people. And so we have programs, like I said, all over the world, and always are encouraging young people to join us in our work at earthecho.org, where we're doing some really exciting things by bringing communities together, providing resources, tools, trainings, mentorship, community, all sorts of terrific tools for this next generation of really fired up. And I think Ashlan will say the same thing. I know she will. We travel all over the world. There's a lot of problems, but it's when we see how passionate, dedicated, ingenious young people are to solving problems, it's what gives us hope.
Ashlan, you want to join in that?
I agree. I mean, if it wasn't for the incredible young people around the world, I don't know if Philippe and I would have chosen to have a second child. But it's the hope that we see in this future generation, that they are, not only do they have to deal with these heavy issues, but they are fired up and they are going to figure them out. And it inspires us every single minute of every single day.
Well, I know you two are incredibly busy. What's up for you two next? What's happening? You got Going Blue. You've got Oceans for Dummies. You've got a new family member there.
Yeah.
I mean, this just came out just a few months. This is our COVID project, Oceans for Dummies, and it's a book that we're really excited about because it's kind of a foundation for reminding people about the importance of the ocean. Ashlan wrote most of it.
Thank you. Yes.
Another book that I did, Ocean Endangered, the second book of my Endangered series, just came out a few weeks ago. So we've been busy with books and working on a couple of new projects, some animated shows, etc. Right?
Yeah, and can't wait to get the girls. So we have 2 little girls now. Cannot wait to get out on an expedition with the girls. So
Well, I hope I can wave to you from the coast of Huntington Beach on a nice clean beach. That's while
right.
you're out
That's
there.
right. We hope so too.
I think they're telling me that the next author needs to make an appearance. So thank you so very, very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Next up, we have an award-winning author, a middle school science instructor, Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer is the author of Brain Games, Save the Crash Test Dummies, and the book we're going to discuss today, Everything You Need to Ace Chemistry in One Big Fat Notebook. Jennifer, welcome.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Oh, boy. When I saw this book on the list, I just had chills go down my spine, like, chemistry again. I didn't do so well the first time.
Don't feel bad. I get that from everybody.
I am a guy who made a C in chemistry many years ago. I was not a good chemistry student. I wish this book was around when I was taking chemistry. What made you decide to write this book and teach chemistry the way you do?
Well, I will say that this is part of the Workman Publishing Big Fat Notebook series. So they came to me to ask me to write it. And it was, I'll say I had to take a few steps back. I mean, I was a chemistry major. I went to the Naval Academy. But that was a long time ago. And B, I was not a straight A student there in chemistry. So it was tough to write this book. But honestly, now, all of these years later, I think I understand chemistry a lot better than I did when I was in high school and college, because when you have to write about it, you really have to understand what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you do that so beautifully. First, your writing is so clear. I understood it, and it's funny. Our listeners didn't hear this, but I I tried to give you a little test in our pre
Oh, yes.
discussion, and she just nailed the thing. And I'm glad she didn't ask me questions about chemistry. Certainly, you address this question so beautifully in your book, which is, why does chemistry matter? So why does chemistry matter in our world?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny. I was just listening to Philippe and Ashlan, and it's like water chemistry is everywhere. Everything you do, everything that is made of, the chairs you're sitting on, the headphones you're wearing, there's chemistry involved with all of that. So it's really important. But if I can say, like you, a lot of people are scared of it, right? They're like, oh,
Mhm.
and what I wanted to do with this book was make it less scary. Sometimes you can just say, hey, I'm not taking the chemistry class, right? I'm going to take this different class. Sometimes you have to take the chemistry class. Okay, then if that's the class you have to take, and maybe you're not so excited about it, how can we make it fun? How can we make it interesting? How can we make it easier for you to understand? And that's what I tried to do with the book, was relate to things that people know, um, and can say, okay, chemistry is like cooking. Do you like to cook? Okay, let's start with that, right? And that kind of makes people feel like, oh, I can cook. Like I'm doing chemistry. All right, right?
I've had some failed experiments on that front
Well, you know,
quite often, but I keep trying.
who doesn't?
Jennifer, I'm curious, what was your favorite experiment or lesson in the book? Because there were so many really cool ones.
Oh my gosh, that's hard to say, honestly, because when I wrote this book, we were trying to pick the topics that fit into like all of the US different curriculums, and everybody has different ones. I think one of my favorite experiments, which I'm not even sure made it to the book, is the volcano experiment. Who hasn't done that with Diet Coke and Mentos or whatever? Because there's all different versions of it. But for me, that's chemistry at its basics, because you're taking two different chemicals, materials, putting them together, and you get to this huge thing. And everyone can relate to how cool that is. And then the next step is, all right, let's write the chemical equation for that. Let's get a little more familiar with what we're doing. And you introduce it that way.
Well, I did the experiment just before the show started, right in the hallway. My favorite chapter that you had in here was on bonding. Can you
Oh,
talk
yes.
about that? Let's just zoom right in on one topic. The chapter on bonding. Tell me about that.
So the chapter on bonding is actually probably one of the most important concepts in chemistry for everybody to understand. And it starts small and then you move out. So bonding is how two atoms work together. So the most basic one that you were just talking about is water. It's H2O. Okay, so there's an oxygen and there's two hydrogens. And then you talk about where the electrons, those are the basic little things around the molecule, right? The nucleus, how they interact and move around. And if you start with bonding and understand how these two things fit together, then you can go into more depth if you need to. But that helps you understand how carbon is in so much of what we do, and water and oxygen and hydrogen and nitrogen and all of these different things. And Ashlan and Philippe were also talking about pollution. So this is in the ocean. You can understand the chemistry of how the ocean changes because of pollution or acidification.
Well, I have one more question for you. How many thank you letters have you received from AP chemistry students?
Well, I have to say that this book came out during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was pretty surprised because, I mean, right now, who knows how a book's going to do when it comes out during the pandemic. And if you go to Amazon, I think I have over 1,800 5-star reviews. Now, to be fair, I have also gotten emails saying, on this page, there is this typo, which happens, that happens. But I have to say, I'm really excited that that many kids are reading it. And if I can say, my husband works at a medical device company. Several of the people that work there that have PhDs have this book on their desk. I'm like, this is cool, right?
Well, I am passing it to my son so he can pass the AP chemistry
Yeah,
test.
good luck
100%.
to him on that. That's a tough test.
Thank you so very,
Thanks
very
for
much.
having me, Chris.
We are next joined by Stephen Cosgrove. He is the author of more than 350 books, including the incomparable Serendipity series, which I think we've all read. He has sold, and this is stunning, over 85 million books in every format and language. And he is here to discuss his environmental fantasy, young adult novel, SOS, The Song of the Sea. So, Stephen, welcome.
Am I the only non-scientist here?
With the two of us, we are holding down that front, right?
Yeah, but you passed biology. I didn't. But the thing that's intriguing is that as I went through high school and went through early parts of college and didn't know I was going to become a writer, everything that I learned about science allows me to reflect that in fantasy, which allows me to throw an emphasis on the need for change, and by doing it in a fantastical fashion. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what I've done with Serendipity. Serendipity itself, as small children's books, all have basic structural messages that are inside of it. But the like Song of the Sea is me trying to talk about what's going on in the ocean, at least on an adult level, in a fantasy level, so that people become more and more aware.
Well, man, I think that's what fiction allows us to do. I think of books like The Jungle or The Grapes of Wrath. I mean, that's how we change as a society. And oftentimes it's the voices of fiction that allow us to get there, right? And they speak to us in a different way. So no, Stephen, you're doing wonderful work out there. Thank you.
Well, my thing was that I wanted to really involve the fact that so much was going on in the environment, and to really go to those people, to write to those people that aren't true scientists and don't follow science, but are interested in some sort of fantastical story and we can imprint them, we can move them in the right direction, so they become aware of what everybody else is supposed to be doing and how they're going to clean up this environment and this mess that we've created.
Well, I may be mistaken, but I have heard you say, I think, that Song of the Sea was your favorite novel that you wrote. And that's saying something. You've written so many. What inspired you to write the story?
Well, I was actually in Dallas, Texas, and I was kind of alone, trapped in my room, my hotel room, and having dinner there, and watched a news story about whales beaching themselves. And the newscasters were asking why, and my mind immediately triggers trying to find out the reason why. So what I did was I tried to step into the mind of a whale and why it would do that if it did it from a practical reason. And the story began to evolve there. And it took me, quite a few years, at least with enough research that a lot of it is based on fact, but then trying to meld everybody into the mind of a whale, what it's like to be, what we look at everything from our perspective, but we ignore the fact that there are dolphins and whales out there, and they really are sentient. They really do think. And so I tried to give them voice. It was a tough book to write because I really had to immerse the reading public in that kind of mindset so that they could begin to think like a whale.
Well, Stephen, you begin your novel with the character of Harmony, this whale who sings this beautiful song of the sea. Can you explain to everyone watching, what is that song that she's singing, and what are they trying to tell? And use the phrase, the sandwalkers. What are they trying to tell the sandwalkers?
Well, they're in protest because they've been kind of dumped on forever, and the sandwalker, mankind, has never communicated with them, yet they communicate with themselves, and they've had no way to do it. And so they enact this protest, and the protest is to beach themselves, to die in vain, just to, throw themselves back up on the shore to show how bad the sandwalkers are. And the story evolves around that, first through the whale, Harmony, and then through the dolphins, and then finally through the mind and the storytelling of a deaf marine biologist who begins to understand that they do speak and that they are calling for a trial.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, I actually love that switch in point of view at the end, especially. And I have a question that I wrote, like, why did you decide to bring the deaf marine biologist in and make him deaf as well too? That switch in point of view was really beautiful at the end of the novel.
Well, I thought it was important, one, because I wanted kind of to say that we're the ones that are deaf. We we're not listening. And really, if you are around people that are sometimes centrally unaware or muted in their lives, like deaf, they really learn to communicate in different ways. And so she was able to really feel the language as they talked and the vibrations of the sea, and began to realize there was a pattern to it and there was a language to it, and they were calling for something pretty mammoth. And they did. They called for a trial of mankind.
Well, do you mind if you could read a short passage? Because you're the fiction writer, and your language was so beautiful.
Well, I've got a problem right now. Is one, I don't have the book with me. I'm on the road, and I'm about to be cut off. I'm getting a notice from the service provider here. They're cutting our line, so I'm about to die here in a minute, second. Anyway, so if you'd like to read, please.
Well, I do not want to cut this. I can hear the feedback. Stephen, thank you so very, very much.
Oh, thank you.
Your book is beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, we are joined by Nicole Stott. She is an artist, an aquanaut, a mom, the founder of the Space for Art Foundation. She's a retired NASA astronaut. She's flown on the space shuttle. She's lived 100 days in space on the International Space Station. And I don't know if I have this right, Nicole, but I have to ask, were you part of the mission that sent the first tweet from outer space? And I also have you down as the author, certainly the author of Back to Earth, What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet and Our Mission to Protect. The tweet question first.
The tweet question first. Yeah, and I think that was that like 12 years ago, like yesterday or something? It was like somebody posted about it. But yeah, it was like the first live Twitter interaction, I think, from space to a group of people here on Earth. So
were those your thumbs?
I mean, probably.
That is fantastic. Well, let's talk about your book, Back to Earth: What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet and Our Mission to Protect It. As I said, I loved your book. I needed it with all that's going on in the world. It was such a beautiful, optimistic view of what we need to do. But I want to start with the exciting stuff too. It's all exciting, but you're an astronaut and an aquanaut. You lived 100 days in space and 20 days plus underwater. What is it like to live in a unique environment like that? What kinds of unexpected things did you encounter?
I think, well, one of the things I think that's interesting is how just really wonderfully, like, going to live and work underwater and, like in the Aquarius habitat for, I think we were there 18 days, like how perfect that is an analog to what it's going to be like to live and work in space. And that's everything from the fact that, Aquarius, it's about the size of a school bus. That's about the size of one of the modules, on the space station. I think the most perfect thing about it is that, when you go down to 60 feet underwater, scuba diving, and you're down there for more than an hour, you can't just swim safely to the surface, right? Your body's so saturated with nitrogen. So you're in this place, you're living in this place, and you have to, as a crew, figure out how to deal with anything that might go wrong there. You can't just escape to the surface. And the same is true on your space station, right? You can't just jump in the spaceship anytime you want and bail and head back to Earth. So just perfect in every way, from the way we live there and the way that that we work there as a crew, the science we're doing, the exploration we're doing. But and people look at me something like, what do you mean go live underwater to learn how to live, to live in space? I'm like, yeah, it's the great, and I highly recommend it. I mean, if you get the chance to, go do a mission like this, and I'm sure Philippe and Ashlan have, visited this place as part of their exploration and science and experience, and hopefully can attest to the fact that it's just so cool to have this perspective of inner space where the planet just seems to wrap around you, and then to use that perspective and take it to space where you're kind of wrapping around the planet, right? You've got this macro view now, and just be able to compare those two things and appreciate them, I think is really the key to it.
Your book starts off with that view from space. You talk about the famous photograph and just how stunning that was. I have to ask you, as someone who probably will never go to space, I can't afford it. What was that view like? I mean, so few people have been able to see our planet from that perspective. Can you describe it to everyone watching?
Yeah, I think and nothing prepares you. And for me, that was the same like on my first scuba dives too. Like,
Uh,
oh my gosh, look at the color, the life that is under the surface, of this ocean, and how that just opens up to you. It's like, the pictures, the videos, the conversations just don't do it justice. The same is true, of course, for, looking out your window back at Earth. And it's overwhelmingly, impressively beautiful. I mean, I remember when first getting to space, and the first thing you want to do is float out of your seat and get to a window and see it. And the first thing I remember thinking is, wow, I'm here. I'm in space.
Mhm.
Like this dream thing coming alive. And wow, I'm alive. I'm here. I'm in space. We made it. And then that view out the window. And the first thing then is like, wow, I live on a planet. We all know that. Talk about what you learn in kindergarten, right? I mean, that. And yet it's the reality of it, just like that Earthrise image, like, oh my gosh, that's who and where we are. We are all together on a planet in space. And that reality it's right in your face through the window of the space station. And then for me, the easiest way I had to describe it was like I did for my 7-year-old son. He was 7 when I flew the first time, and on the phone with him the first time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, imagine the brightest light bulb you've ever seen. You've splattered with all the colors Earth to be. And then you go to turn it on and you almost have to like not open. You got to kind of squint and get your eyes adjusted to it. When it's so crystal clear and glowing and colorful, and it's against the blackest black you've ever imagined. And it's moving and alive. And yeah, and then you're just in awe of that every time you see
As
it.
an artist, you had to try to sketch that. I'm assuming, like you
Yeah.
must have been up there trying to wait to draw and
Yeah.
reproduce
Well,
that.
I mean, I brought a paint kit with me. I brought a watercolor kit with me and was able to paint while I was there. And that experience, kind of that opportunity to bring something like human that I like doing here on Earth with me to space, and then to try to capture the memory of it. That's a really very special personal memory of the whole experience.
Well, you've already mentioned one of the lines I was going to read to you next. You have a mantra in your book. This is, "We
Yeah.
live on a planet. We are all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is the thin blue line of atmosphere that protects us all." Can you tell me
Yeah.
about that concept?
Yeah, I mean, what are the more basic things that we have in common, right? Right? And in all the complexity of space flight, I think, for me, it came down to these relationships as human beings that we've developed through this program, and all of what we're doing that's ultimately about improving life on Earth. But those were the three simple lessons, and I would argue profound lessons that I came home with, that I don't they're with me every day now. And that's one of the motivations with the book is I want everyone to be thinking about those three things every day. And then I want them to leverage them in a way that says, okay, and it's like the others have talked about, what's my call to action in this, right? What do I do with what I've become aware of, what I've discovered that I want to share with everyone else? And how do I get other people to realize these things, grasp that, and then really accept the responsibility, I think, of their role as crewmates and not passengers here on Spaceship Earth.
One of the things you address in your book is how so many people ask you, why do we go to space? Why can't we do this on Earth? Why do we spend so much money on space exploration? And I thought your response in your book was beautiful to that. Do you mind
Yeah,
sharing?
well, I mean, or the simple, like, well, all the money we spend in space is actually spent down here on Earth. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing we should know, right? But it's true. And then I know a lot, in the news lately, with a lot of the new commercial flights going on and stuff, there's big questions. I head off next week. I don't know if some of our other authors are heading this way too, but to COP26 in the UK. And I know that's going to be the question. Why aren't we spending all that money here on Earth to solve the problems here on Earth? Why are we sending it to space? And we could spend all day talking about this. Everything we're doing off the Earth is for the Earth. There's a really wonderful another author, Larry Niven, sci-fi writer, who has a quote, and I have it in the book that, and it doesn't get attributed to him often. So I always try to make sure people know this, but It's like, if the dinosaurs had had a space program, they wouldn't have gone extinct. I mean, honestly. And then the second part of it to me is even better. It's like, and if we don't, it'll be our own fault. I mean, again, simple yet really, really telling. And yeah, I hope people will read the book and look for those kinds of examples in there too about, the science that's happening in space. When I think about the three authors we just heard from and the common things that were coming in, I was scribbling notes like water and chemistry. Jennifer mentioned like, that the chemistry is all around us too. Everything is interconnected. I think every subject we want to pick, there's an interconnectivity to it. Making that relatable is so important. It's what I love about the other three as well. I tried to do that in Back to Earth too. This bringing sci-fi to sci-fact. That's happening because of what we're doing in space. We are able to measure and understand the health and well-being of our planet, or the not so healthy aspects of it, through the observation of Earth that we do from space. And that's with the instrumentation and the probes and the satellites. And it's with us as human beings, opening our eyes and our hearts and minds to what we're seeing below us too. So,
well, Nicole, I will walk away from today's session just filled with optimism in terms of all the hope and just optimism of what the next generation can do.
Yes.
Part of your book, you invite your reader to, quote, be a guardian. And every chapter has such amazing advice for the way we should live our lives. Act like everything is local, respect the blue line, live life, not as a crew, not as a passenger, right? Go slow to go fast. It's those titles themselves can help us live a better life. I'm curious, can you talk about those ideas that can carry us forward?
Yeah, I mean, and that's, that was the intention, was not to give people like this checklist of thou shalt do these things, and then you'll help solve all the problems. It was really, I really tried to look at this way that these ways, I guess, that's what each of the chapter headings are, is these ways that we come together peacefully, successfully, and have been doing so for over 20 years on the International Space Station, right? And that, that international word I think is important. That's 5 international space agencies representing 15 different countries, somehow peacefully and successfully working on this mission. And we're doing it on a mechanical life support system, right? This place in space that we've built to mimic what Earth does for us naturally, that was put so perfectly here for us. And somehow, while we're a crew on that station, we recognize that, man, I got to pay attention to how much CO2 is in my atmosphere. I've got to know how much clean drinking water I have. I've got to be aware of the integrity of my thin metal hull and the health and well-being of all my crewmates, because those are things that my survival depends on. And then once those things are in place, we can thrive. And that's, that is the underlying message. All those ways are just how we're living as crewmates on a space station. And I think, I understand it's order of magnitude, many orders of magnitude when you talk about, 7 people on a station and 7+ billion here on a planet. But I think the rules of engagement still apply.
Well, Nicole, thank you. We have our own crew here, and I want to invite
Yes,
all of
do.
our crew back to this environment we have. There we go. There we go. Okay, we're missing Steve in there. His internet gave out on us, and Ashlan is also, I'm assuming, rather busy at the moment. Philippe, you are
Muted.
Ashlan is listening, but she's off in the back helping the little one.
Your own crew.
Speaking of food and sustenance and support, life support systems, the 2-month-old is getting that right now.
Well, we, as you know, this is the S.T.E.A.M Race to Space Reading Challenge, and I've tried to ask this question of everyone today, which is, if books can be this magic, they can be this conduit to another world, to how we improve ourselves and better ourselves. How did you guys become readers? And what advice do you have for our listeners today to become readers? So Jennifer, I'll start with you. Have you always been a reader? How did you become a reader?
I have always been a reader. Reading was huge in my family. At night before we went to bed, even as little kids, my parents always read to us, and we had books. And one of our big events as a family was to go to the library. And when I was a kid, my goal was to read like every book on that shelf, right? And win the summer reading awards because we got a blizzard from Dairy Queen, right? So if I can give anything, read what you love. I recently saw something where one of a parent was saying, well, the kids should read the book to the end. Why? If you don't like the book, then maybe that's not for you, but pick up another one, right? Expand what you like and maybe try to read the one you don't like. But if you don't, that's okay. Just read. It doesn't matter what it is. Just read.
I'm that way with most books. I have 4 or 5 at one time, Jennifer. Always. I'm working on several at a time. Nicole,
Yes.
how about you? Have you always been a reader?
Yeah, I think so. And I must have followed your advice, Jennifer. It's always been, primarily for me, it's been, okay, what am I curious about? What am like when it was about, and, Philippe, like when it was about wanting to learn how to scuba dive, I felt like I had to read books about it, and learn more about it that way. My husband is one of these people that has 5, 6 books going on at the same time, every range, from sci-fi, his expertise in that to what's the latest thing on space business and, and everything in between. And so I witness it around me as well. But I think the curiosity thing was what really drove me. And then when I had to read books at school, where they assign something like you're saying, Jennifer, where you don't want to read it to the end. I think that was always interesting to me that somehow, when you're forced to read it to the end, there's always some little nugget in there that you might not have expected to be excited about, or it could be something that you discover you're completely opposed to what was written in that book, and you want to go learn more about, why that seems so off to you. And I think that's equally as important, is to discover these things that you might not have known about otherwise, and they might not make you feel all that good, but you should go off and learn more about them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Philippe?
Chris, I was actually a bit of a reluctant reader when I was younger. And so I have an older sister, and at 6 or 7 years old, I was always getting her hand-me-downs, including a bicycle that had lots of pastel colors and tassels on the on the arms, and handlebars, and I wanted nothing more than a new bike. And so my mom said, "Okay, you have to read 200 books to get a new bike."
Wow.
But the stipulation was it had to have a cover and a two cover, back and a front cover, and at least one page with words on it. She didn't stipulate how many words, nothing like that. So of course she knew I was going to do this, but I'm thinking I'm so smart, 6 or 7 years old. So I found all the little shortest children's books I could find at the library. But sure enough, after plowing through as many of those as I could find, I kind of got bored with that. And then I was like, well, okay, let me try a little bit more of a longer book, and then a longer book. And by the end of it, I was reading chapter books. And so it was a great way for her, as opposed to the books that I felt like I had to read because of school, to encourage me, to give me like structure, but the bounds within, to start to experience books and explore books. And unbeknownst to me, because she's smart, she tricked me into kind of going on this journey. And at my own pace, I thought it was my own choice, and then I fell in love with books through that. So that was, I remember that when I was 6 or 7 years old, and then I got a new bike, and that was the greatest positive reinforcement you can imagine, because there were no tassels on the handlebars, and I was off to the races from then on.
I'm a bit like Jennifer. I would have done it for the blizzard. We are joined by two new
I
guests.
should have held out for a bike. Yeah.
We are joined by two guests here. Nicole, I saw your dog pop in there. What is his or her name?
This is Ripley.
Hi, Ripley.
Yeah.
We have to have a conversation after this while you've named your dog Ripley.
Your black velvet one, and lady who's over hiding is the white fluffy one. I'm going to lean and open the door.
We are joined by Ripley, and we are also joined by Peter Montoya. He is the president of the Orange County Children's Book Festival. Peter, welcome. I know you also wanted to address the same question about how you became a reader. So Peter, welcome.
Chris, thank you so much. You did an absolutely fantastic job today. Thank you for all our panelists and authors for being here today. I am also a speaker, a writer, and a serial entrepreneur, and I have become a huge reader. I was lucky enough in school that my teachers and parents were smart enough to say, we don't care what you read, just as long as you read. And so I became a reader actually very, very early on. However, when I talk to students these days, they oftentimes say one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, and that is, I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
And they really take it on as an identity and as a permanent state, like they can never become a reader again. Unfortunately, our modern technologies and social medias have been actually reducing our attention spans such that we're not accustomed to reading long text anymore, like articles and books. However, just because you can't right now doesn't mean you can't become one day. Now, I'm going to give you one reason why you want to become a reader. At some point in time, someday, you're going to have a job and you're going to want to have influence. Whether you're an architect or an astronaut, a teacher, you're in business, an entrepreneur like me, or maybe a professor, a nurse, a plumber, an electrician. And you're going to want to have people take you seriously. And you're going to wonder, how do I get people to take me more seriously? The best people articulate themselves in the shortest, most powerful words possible. They know how to express their ideas in a concise, deliverable way so that other people can hear it and respond quickly. The best way to build your vocabulary, the best way to become an articulate person who speaks with power is by reading books. And it is not hard. If you read one chapter a day, you'll read about 24 books a year. 24 books a year is thousands of books in a lifetime. It'll put you in the top percentages of people who are both informed, empathetic, and very, very effective in no matter what job you have. So please never, ever fall into the trap of thinking, I'm not a reader. Anyone can become a reader.
Yes.
Well,
Hear, hear.
I think we have 4 great authors. Stephen not here today. Great places to start to become a reader if you're not today. So I would say to everyone watching today, go out, join the STEAM Race to Space Reading Challenge, sign up, pick up these amazing books. It'll change your world. It'll change your life. It'll give you that perspective where you can see the universe from an entirely different way. So Nicole, Ashlan in the background there, Philippe, Jennifer, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.